All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. A week ago, the Boston Celtics appeared to be dead in the water as they had dropped the first three games in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Miami Heat. And after the Celtics' lifeless loss in game three, as they were defeated by 26 points, it appeared that they had already made their summer plans. But with the likes of guard Marcus Smart saying, "Don't let us get a game," the Celtics have answered the bell. And after picking themselves up off of the canvas, Boston has now done what only three other teams in NBA playoff history have been able to do, which is to erase an 0-3 series deficit. However, the Celtics are looking to rewrite history. No team has ever won a postseason series in the NBA after losing their first three. And aside from having all of the momentum heading into game seven, the Celtics also have home court advantage tomorrow night, which is something that the New York Knicks, Denver Nuggets, or Portland Trailblazers before them could not boast about when they were able to force game seven after erasing an 0-3 series deficit. Now, how do we get here? First and foremost, the Celtics really just started finishing games. You go back to the first two games in Boston, and the Celtics had opportunities late to win those games, especially in game two, but they could never put the Heat away. And it seemed to be that there was a carryover from dropping their first two games at home to game three. And of course, at that point, Miami was buzzing. They were flying high as not only had they stolen home court advantage away from Boston, they had an opportunity to put them in a legit deficit. And we saw that in the first two rounds for Miami. They did it in the first round with Milwaukee. They split the first two games there before taking games three and four at home. They also did it against the New York Knicks in the conference semis. They won game one at the Garden, and then they took both games in Miami before finishing off the Knicks in six games. This time around, we saw Miami obviously take care of Boston in game number three, but then in game number four, to that point, Boston had played their most complete game of the series, which resulted in the 116 to 19 to 99 win, excuse me, as they just clicked on both ends of the court. And their defense, which had been lackluster through the first three games, finally decided to show up. We saw the Celtics offense really wake up in game number five as they were efficient from behind the 3 point line. And last night, to me, that game just simply was a microcosm of the season for both of these teams. You look at the Celtics, and they've had a problem with this throughout the season. They'll jump out on a team, put them in a hole, but they won't be able to finish them off. And I think a big reason for that is due to the fact that the Celtics rely too much on the 3 point shot. They're not a consistent 3 point team. And we've seen this throughout the year, and it has been a detriment at times to the Celtics. We saw it again last night as Boston put Miami in a deficit, most notably due to their defense and their efficiency on their field goals or 2 point field goals. Boston had a penchant to keep going with the 3 point shot late. Miami woke up, and it looked like Miami was about to pop the champagne and get the Eastern Conference trophy last night until quick thinking Derek White got the rebound off of the miss, and it looked like the miss was good initially for Marcus Smart on the 3 pointer, and of course got that tip in with zero point 0.1 of a second left on the clock, which was able to force a game seven. You look at it right now, heading into game seven tomorrow night, the stars for both teams are going to have to shine. Jimmy Butler needs to be the guy that we've seen for the majority of this postseason run for the Heat. And of course, Jimmy Butler was a star of Miami's first round win over Milwaukee. The same can be said uh, after the Heat got the best of the Knicks in round two. And of course, those first two games of this series in Boston, it was all about Jimmy Butler. Of course, we know what happened in the fourth quarter in game number two between Jimmy Butler and Grant Williams. And then, of course, Jimmy Butler just took over, and the rest is history. Jimmy Butler needs to go back to being that guy. But since then, credit to the Celtics defensively because they have given Jimmy Butler a lot of different looks with a lot of different guys. And they're using their size advantage. You look at Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown has a huge wingspan. He's taller than Jimmy Butler. There's been switches with a guy like Robert Williams on Jimmy Butler. And of course, he's used his wingspan, but just again, just throwing different looks at him. The jump shot has not been there. And even at times, even in the second half last night, Jimmy Butler looked hesitant at times, but it wasn't until those last 5 minutes that Jimmy Butler found his groove, most notably just getting to the free throw line. And of course, the rest is history. But he's going to have a big game tomorrow night for the Miami Heat, as is Bam Adebayo. Bam Bam's going to have to come up big for the Heat, not just on the boards, but also with his scoring as well. Miami's going to need a big game from him. On the flip side for Boston, you look at Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And of course, Jaylen Brown started off strong last night in game number six, but it was the foul trouble that hindered him for a good chunk of the game. Jayson Tatum, at times the jump shot was there, but at times it wasn't. But nonetheless, Jayson Tatum is a gamer, and I think he's going to be ready to go tomorrow night, just like the stars on both sides for this contest, because at the end of the day, it's win or go home. Now, for the Celtics, they're going to have to find a way to feed off of that home crowd tomorrow night. As you know, that the fans at the TD Garden, if they could, they would single-handedly will the Celtics to win. So you know that place is going to be electric. You think about the Celtics in Game 7 scenarios throughout their history. Most of those obviously came at the Boston Garden, but nonetheless, the Celtics simply find ways typically to win these games. It doesn't always happen that way. If you're Miami, if you're Eric Spoelstra, you didn't seem too phased after game six last night, and you can't because you got to go out there and get yourselves ready for game number seven. And up until this point of the series, the first six games, you can't really think about those. If you're either team, especially Miami, after the way that they lost game number six, you got to go out there and just attack and do whatever you need to do to not only get your momentum back, but win and get to the NBA Finals. Now, New England sports, what can I say? They just find a way to be in these scenarios. You go back several years, easily about 10 years, where the Boston Bruins were up 3-0 on the Philadelphia Flyers in a playoff series before the Flyers came back and won the next four. Of course, you think about Super Bowl number 51, where the New England Patriots found themselves in a 28-3 deficit in the second half versus the Atlanta Falcons, only to finish that game on a 31-0 run, which included a walk-off touchdown in overtime for the Patriots' fifth Super Bowl championship at the time. And then, of course, the kings of the mountain, if you will, the 2004 Boston Red Sox, who not only reversed the curse of the New York Yankees, they became the first and only MLB team to erase an 0-3 deficit in a postseason series as they dropped the first three to the New York Yankees and came back and won the final four. Of course, with those game six and seven being historic wins in Yankee Stadium. And now the Celtics find themselves in this situation as well. This is going to be a very interesting and electric game tomorrow night. Obviously, game seven scenarios, all hands on deck for both teams. But then on top of that, the errors, the turnovers, the mistakes, they're all going to be magnified in a situation like this because at the end of the day, this is a legacy contest because if you're Miami, you don't want to be the first NBA franchise to have a 3-0 series lead and lose the next four, even if you came into the postseason, um, as an eight seed. If you're the Celtics, obviously you don't want to do all of this work to get back to to force a game seven just to lose. You think about the star players on both sides. Jayson Tatum is looking to help the Celtics get back to the NBA Finals for the second consecutive year, as Boston feels like they have unfinished business after falling last year in the final to the Golden State Warriors. On the flip side, for Miami, you were at this point last year. These are the same two teams that were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year. And of course, you can say that Jimmy Butler missed shot late last year in game number 7 is all that prevented Miami, if you will, from getting to the NBA Finals last year. So there's a lot of legacy on the line for both of these clubs, and it's not just about the stars. Who are going to be the unsung heroes? I mean, the thing was last night, Jimmy Butler. It started with Duncan Robinson really hitting the threes for Miami to get them going in the fourth quarter in their comeback. But then, we saw Jimmy Butler finally rise to the occasion, if you will. But on the Miami side, obviously, in that situation, pardon me, in the Boston side rather, you probably wanted Jayson Tatum to get that last shot. Marcus Smart took it, but then an unsung hero like Derek White, and I've said this, to people today, and I'll say it on here as well. If the Celtics are able to come back and win this series, I guarantee you that Derek White will never have to pay for another beer or another drink, period, in the Boston area, maybe the New England area as a whole. Again, talking about that Celtics, lore, the Celtics postseason magic, if you will. We've seen it, so many times. Most notably, you think about Larry Bird in the '87 conference finals, stealing the inbounds pass from Isaiah Thomas and finding a streaking Dennis Johnson to put Boston up in game 5. You think about, of course, anybody who's watched NBA basketball over the years has always heard that famous radio call about when John Havlicek stole the ball for the Celtics. So, nonetheless, this could be an opportunity for an unsung hero here. And it's not just on the Celtics side, it's the Heat side as well, because this is a group, sans Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo and Kyle Lowry. This is, for the most part, an unsung group. You've got your Gabe Vincents, your Duncan Robinsons, guys like that, your Caleb Martins, your Max Struces, guys like that who are overlooked coming into this league. But you know what? They have found a home on this Miami Heat team. Will either team be able to find their stroke from deep? I mean, we saw Miami get it going last night from deep. But even with that said, Duncan Robinson had a couple of wide open 3-point shots last night that could have potentially won the game and the series, of course, for Miami. And I guarantee you that he would love to have those back. And on one of them, he's probably too open because he hesitated slightly before he took the shot. And in my opinion, he might have felt like he was too open. He couldn't believe that he was that wide open on it. But nonetheless, will Miami find their groove from 3-point land to get things going? Boston, after shooting solid in games 4 and 5 from behind the 3-point line, they were not good last night. Will they find their groove? Will being back on their home court and feeding off of the home fans help them feed off of that? And if the Celtics are unable to find their stroke from behind the 3-point line, will they focus on getting to the basket? We got to wait and see. The Celtics bench, is Malcolm Brogdon going to be available for this team? We got to wait and see. They have a size advantage. I still like the Celtics better when Robert Williams is in the lineup as opposed to Al Horford. Al Horford, for the most part, has been a 3-point shooter throughout this season, but nonetheless, we saw Horford come up and make some big plays last night. A block late in this game, running to the basket, running the floor to get a breakaway dunk. These are the things that the Celtics did well for 3.5 quarters last night, the little things. And for the winner of this game, regardless if it's the Heat or the Celtics, they're going to have to do the little things in order to win. That's what Miami did in the first 3 games of this series. This is what Boston did in the last 3 games of this series. It's the sum of the little things at both ends of the court, getting the offensive rebounds, getting additional possessions for your team, getting those hard fought defensive rebounds, going out there, forcing the turnovers, getting to the basket for easy buckets. All of these things add up. And at some point, somebody's going to do a little bit more than their opponent tomorrow night, rather, to be in this position. Now, you look at the rookie head coach in Joe Mazzulla going up against a seasoned vet and Eric Spoelstra. And through the first 3 games, Eric Spoelstra could do no wrong, while there were plenty of us wondering, well, is the rookie factor for Joe Mazzulla hurting the Celtics right now because he did make some bad decisions, in my opinion, late in games 1 and 2. But nonetheless, here in game 7, that experience is still going to be a factor. But I will say this for Joe Mazzulla. I think as a head coach throughout this postseason run for the Celtics, he has grown up. He has learned about making adjustments. And on top of that, he is relying on his veteran club. Missoula is only 34 years of age. You've got some guys in this team in their late 20s and early 30s and even mid 30s, nonetheless. But, credit to Joe Missoula. He's not afraid to make adjustments, and he's also not afraid to listen to his players. And the same thing can be said for Eric Spoelstra. He's been at it for a long time. I feel like he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. I'm not going to go out there and say that he's a great coach, but he is a solid NBA coach. And it's going to be interesting to see from the sideline who has the edge tomorrow night. And also, another big question: how much do each of these teams have left in the tank? This is, in the old days of boxing, a 15-round heavyweight bout. And when both pugilists would come to the ring, even now in a 12-round boxing match, the touch gloves for the final round, obviously there's mutual respect, but you still want to get the best of your opponent. But unlike boxing, there's not going to potentially be a draw here. Somebody has to go out there and win tomorrow night. It's going to be interesting to see who has enough left in the tank to get it done because aside from being physically grueling, I guarantee you that the series has been mentally grueling for everybody involved. But at the end of the day, one of these teams is 48 basketball minutes away from a trip to the NBA Finals. Will it be the Celtics' second trip in as many years? Or for the Heat, will it be their first time there since 2020? We've got to wait and see. But nonetheless, I think we are in store for a tremendous game tomorrow night. Uh, I think it's a flip of the coin, just like this series has been. If Miami can get off to a strong start, that's going to be the big thing. I really like their chances. But if Boston gets off to a solid start and gets this home crowd into the game, Miami is going to have a long night. So the start of this game, I really do feel is going to be just as important as the finish. Let's see who starts off strong tomorrow night. But nonetheless, I think we should be in store for a solid game 7 with two good teams that have left it all out there. A lot of character, a lot of moxie, and a lot of grit. But let's see who has what it takes to win the Eastern Conference and get to the finals to face the Denver Nuggets. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There is also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.